This episode is sponsored in part by PTZOptics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit PTZOptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Salt Talk, the show that helps ministry professionals and houses of worship like yourselves better yourself in the ministry. I am Stephen Haywood here for PTZOptics, and before we get into the topic and introducing my co-host who's back from his trip, we want to do a little bit of housekeeping. There's going to be a PTZOptics show that's coming up. They are in the process of moving studios, but apparently we're going to do it from my studio this week, so it should be a lot of fun. Tess and myself, we're going to get into some stuff. I believe we're doing it on Thursday, but that might have changed due to the moving process. But just keep tuned to social media to find out. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel. We'd really appreciate that. Next month will be our last episode of the year, with a lot of people traveling around the holidays. I know myself, I'll be out of the office for a couple weeks in the December. It'll be nice to end off next month with a bang. We've got some really cool stuff planned. But this week, we wanted to talk a little bit about enlisting volunteers. The old saying goes, 10% of the people do 90% of the work, and how you could possibly change that in your house of worship. How do you enlist your volunteers? And we're going to dive into that here in a little bit. But first, let me welcome back my co-host, Mr. Greg Terry.
Thank you, brother. It's nice to be back, safe, sound, getting prepped and ready to roll back out to Ukraine again after Christmas. My family will not let me go back before Christmas, but I'm heading back after. What time's your show on Thursday?
I believe we're going to do it from 2 to 3. I think that's the time.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Eastern.
If we can get enough likes and comments, I'll come by Thursday, guys, when everybody's watching that show, and be a live studio audience and do some protesting behind holding the poster boards for Stephen and Tess there. So, well, it's nice to be back. This is a very important topic because people do struggle with volunteers. Let's be honest. That's why we're here. And especially in the changing landscape of the church world, it's becoming more difficult. So hopefully over the next few minutes, we will be able to help you guys out and give you some stuff that will.
Yeah. Yes. So why don't
I'm
we
looking for the right word? Give you some stuff that will. I'm from the South, so we would call it. We'll give you some spruce juice.
Spruce juice. I like that.
I was going to use that phrase, but I decided not to. But no, we're going to give you some spruce juice.
Spruce juice. I have never heard that before. I like that. Why don't you go through and I'll tell you what. They'll be glad that you're back, because let me say, last month and the month before that, I butchered people's names and where they were from. So it's nice to have you back to be able to nail that.
Well, the secret is I tell people that if I'm mispronouncing it, forgive me. But I think I just saw Zach Berry over there in Facebook. They're finishing up a renovation or a upgrade. And I think it's was it Renovation Church? Can you put that comment back up for me?
Renovation Church. Yeah, let me pull that up right quick. There you go.
Yeah. The back end of a renovation. Oh, renovation at church. And our new sound system will be installed next week. New personas. Cool, man. Rick Mitchell, Greg's audio too low.
I bumped you up here, so we should be good there.
I'm sending you hotness. Richard Damon, good morning. Hello to you. James M. Dodge the third. Good morning, all. It's going to be good. Welcome to you, and get ready for a good update here.
Yeah, I'm glad he said something about, because I thought you sounded a little low to me there for a second, and so I bumped you up in live to air, so it should be good. I'm watching the meters here. It looks like you're hitting right where. Yeah,
I'm hitting good out of VMix over here, so we should be right.
So give us a little update. You were over in Ukraine for about a month. Just give because I know we had you on location, and then Chris joined us that day as well to talk audio. how was it trying to find connection? How was it trying to get on? I mean, like,
Well, Ukraine's an amazing place, and when we were in Western cities, of course, they're still trying to function as normal. People go to work or try to. Kids are not really in school. Churches are still happening. They're still trying to have as normal life as possible. So we were able to get access there. When out east, to be honest with you, I was using Starlink a lot from Elon Musk and those systems. So where there's a will, there's a way. And I will tell you, I'm an American. I live here in the US, and I do a lot of work in Europe, a lot of work in Africa. And I can honestly say that cellular coverage, cellular technology, whether it's in a war zone in Ukraine or in the middle of a desert in Tanzania, is much better than in my home in Pennsylvania. I'm just take it from a witness. It's unbelievable. Very good technology, very good coverage. So that was all good. The other thing is, you talk about an interesting program and that we're going to have today about volunteers. Try keeping your volunteer base going in a war zone when people are leaving the country. So hopefully we'll have some Ukrainians in here today, and
yeah,
they probably could give us the best examples of how to have volunteers in tough situations.
So James Dodge wants to know. He says, "So what was the throughput like?"
What was the throughput like?
I guess. Do you have any like speeds that you, as far as the internet speeds go, were you getting like?
Oh, is that what
down,
that question means?
I'm assuming so. And
that's
he,
what I
he can
thought,
he
but I
can
didn't want to
clarify.
assume. On cellular out there in cities that you've probably heard of, excuse me, Dnipro, Zaporozhye, all these cities, Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, I was easily getting 300-400 megabyte down,
Wow.
30-40 up on cellular connection.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
I mean,
on
I
Starlink,
wish I could get that.
Starlink, I was about 30 down. Oh yeah, we were running 5G. On Starlink, I was getting about 30 down, about 8 up.
Yeah. So Jeremy Ridley, is that it? Sorry, it's a little bit distant from me.
Yeah, Ridley.
He says, "Morning, our church has limited setup, but we were able to get a simple track light not too long ago. Is there a way to toggle the tracking features on and off from within OBS? Not from within OBS. You would have to run the actual software that the Simple Track uses, and we usually keep that open all the time. And our team will toggle it on and off between worship and preaching. Preaching, they'll keep it on tracking. For worship, they'll treat it just like a regular PTZOptics camera. So, might be something to put in the community forums for OBS to have somebody from that community build with our API, build a plugin for it. That could be really good. So, yeah, that's what he was asking, Greg. How fast was the connection? Especially interested in
the
satellite.
speeds. So
you didn't really use satellite much, did you?
Only when I was on the front lines with the soldiers, we'd have to use Starlink. Yeah, because you wouldn't use Wi-Fi. We went completely blacked out with our connections.
Right. The closer you got to
all data.
The form.
Well, so the enemy forces wouldn't know where we're at.
Right. So the closer you got to ground zero, we'll call it. Right.
No cellular.
There was no cellular. There was no.
There is, but you don't use it.
That's what I'm saying. Like you were probably told no cellular. You have to use the satellite uplink.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
we were
security,
blacked out
for security reasons. And
we were blacked out.
So,
and still able to get a stream up every day.
He did. Well, you guys remember, what was it? It was 2 months ago. Now that you had called in, you were on. You were from your phone. Looked good. Sounded good.
We were getting materials.
So you were doing that all the way, and then Chris was coming in from your home church locally here in Greenville. So
well, for the guys that are in the stream, guys and gals that are watching and a part of this Salt Talk, let it just be an encouragement to you. You know, you may have tough time streaming. We all do. We've got a great setup over here at our local church, Stephen, PTZOptics, assisted in the build. We've got great guys, and even with that, we still have issues. that you have to work through, whether it's technological or volunteer and those serving. So where there's a will, there's a way. My message for you today is don't give up.
Yeah, and let's elaborate here a little bit on this. So Greg, 2 months ago, messages me a picture of him stopped at the border and says, "What time is the show?" And you got to tell me, he said, because we're stuck at the border right now, and I can't get on at this point. I'm like, well, I think we got an hour. And you're like, oh, I think I should be good. Well, it took you a lot longer than an hour. I think you ended up joining us halfway through the show, which
that was
out of your control.
Yeah, that was the border between Poland and Ukraine.
Right. So you were like, you may want to try to get a backup person to come on. So I called Chris immediately, got him on. But that's what you do. You work through the problems, and it's nice to have people that'll volunteer, their help or their service in a way that we can do it. And we ended up making it happen. But you kept a program going all month, every day of the week.
Every day.
Uploading things from your phone, editing things from the phone. We went in it. So if you guys missed that episode, you want to go back. It's 2 months ago. So I think it was August.
Yes. I was in Ukraine.
It was August, I believe.
Finland last week of August, the entire month of September.
So that episode you want to check out because Greg talks about some of the software that he used.
That would have been August the 29th on Salt Talk.
So make sure you guys, if you didn't check it out, I know some of the guys in here, they said they didn't check it out. But Greg, we're coming up on the holiday season. A lot of houses of worship and churches, they're getting ready for their fall programs, their winter programs, their Christmas specials, all that good stuff. The biggest problem they have outside of obviously the guys that are in here for the broadcasting side of it is volunteers, and they either have too old of a congregation, I hear that a lot, or too young of a congregation. And to me, I don't know if I buy into either one of those because I use both scales with the team that I have. So I figured we could kind of dive into this and I'll kind of ask you some questions here.
Okay.
About, with gathering volunteers, what are some incentives? Do you offer any kind of incentives, or do you just have somebody get up there on announcements and just say, hey guys, we need some volunteers for these departments. Who wants to help?
Okay, so for this particular ministry, which is, let's call it the worship department, for some of your churches here, it may be, musicians, singers, choir, technical, media, sound, streaming, video. Let's lump all this together. No, we never do a public call. Is that the answer you expected?
And why is that? Why don't you do a public call?
Because it avoids frustration. Now, I'm 50 years old. I've been on the road traveling and preaching and doing this since I was 16, and kind of learned the ropes here. So you want to avoid frustration in this ministry. And this is a specialized ministry, much like children's ministry is. So you can't have just anybody being a children's teacher. You can't just have anybody mixing audio or streaming. First of all, they need to have a desire to do so. B, they need to have at least a little bit of skills, a willingness to learn, a team attitude of caring and working with a team. And if you open it up from the stage and say, we're looking for volunteers, you may get the wrong volunteers. So my first rule for recruiting volunteers in this ministry is seek and you shall find. You will have those people that walk up to you after the service and go, man, that was really good. Can I see the soundboard? Bingo. This person's talking to you now. I'm interested in this. How do you guys do such a good stream? It looks like, I see 3 cameras. Hello? Let's go have a talk. Or they come to you and you go, I played 10 years guitar at a church in a different city before I moved here. Maybe I'm interested in getting back in that. This is where you want to start your seeking. If you just seek wide open, you're going to probably create a little bit more stress and headache for yourself than if you seek and look specifically. The scripture says very clearly that Jesus, when that one lost sheep was gone, he left the 99 and he went and hunted for the one lost, the shepherd did. And that's kind of how I see ministry. And it's not that it's exclusive. If you want to learn and you have a desire and you have zero skills, we'll teach you. But you have to have that desire, and you have to have a spirit of teamwork in this ministry.
You have to have a teachable spirit. You have to
teachable spirit. That's it. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you can't come in and think you know everything, and they're hard to work with, people like that. I mean, listen, a prime example, Greg, as I head up our area of media ministry, we'll call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When your team came in, Chris was kind of like, oh, I don't want to step on this guy's toes. This is his baby. And I was just like, guys, do your magic. Like I think that's where that teachable attitude starts at the top. If you have that, you guys came in and said, hey, do you want to make this better? I was at the point where like, yeah, I want to make this better. You and Chris were like, well, then we got to do this, and this, and change it. And
but let's
do it.
Break that down though. That's on the audio side.
Right.
That was our expertise. Now, when you bring your guys and you come to our church, Stephen and I live about 30 minutes away apart, and you say, okay, we need to fix the network. We need to check these cameras. I go to lunch. I'm not sitting there trying to say, okay, Stephen, I think maybe you need to move that over there. And no way.
Right.
I'm going to let this guy be an expert.
Right.
He is.
We have a bunch of, let's get to some of these questions coming in, because this is going to be a really interactive show today, guys. So keep those questions coming. Let's start with James Dodge. I did have that pulled up, but I'll pull it back up here. And he says about it would be nice to get volunteers from local schools to participate, such as internship. I know a lot of colleges, Christian colleges, Bible colleges, they're always looking for ways to get in there. Classes will give them credit if they can volunteer at a house of worship for that.
For us locally, we are in Greenville, Pennsylvania. We have a college here. It's Teal College, and we've had many student volunteers. We have one now. We've had them on the worship team, technical department. They come, and they'll come to school. Maybe they've been active in their church. That's what's happened many times. And they'll come to our church and say, we've heard about your church, and we've seen this and we've seen that. I'm here as a student. I love God, and I'd love to volunteer. We roll them in pretty quickly.
Will Revenstein says, we've created a pass-down book that helps relay all the important info for volunteers in case the trained people aren't around. That's also a good idea.
It's great. We actually have checklists. So beside every machine, whether it's ProPresenter, our vMix station, audio board, iPad,
cameras.
We have checklists, cameras. Yeah.
Very
good point.
So James Dodge also goes on to say, he says, most of our congregants are more gifted in age and not so interested in the technical side. But you know what? We had a lady, and I want to say she's in her mid-70s. That woman is as smart as a whip, man. She'll take her old method of pen and paper. She has a little tablet that she carries, a little Meade tablet, 3-ring, and she writes down every step. And she can go in there and run a TriCaster. She can run vMix. She can set up Stream Deck. She can edit things on the cameras. The PTZOptics SuperJoy. She can go in there. She can change color, white balance. She understands what that is because she writes it down. And that's the way in school, when Greg, before computers and laptops were so reasonable, you take notes in school, right? So that's what she did. And we have young teenagers who can't sit still. Well, they love, those are they already know how to use a joystick, so you put them on a camera, man, and they will get some of the most amazing shots because they can't sit still. And they want to zoom in and pull out and get all these action shots. So there's both sides of the spectrum, I think.
Throw me John's.
I'm pulling it right up for you right now.
Great point on no public call. What about your church board selecting your volunteers or inheriting volunteers from previous leadership? So, okay. Yeah. I hope everyone understands the no public call. And that's not for everything. Sure, we do a big harvest festival. We just had one a couple of weeks ago. Of course, there's public call. We need volunteers. We need candy. We need volunteers to run the game stations. That's completely different ball of wax. But on specialized ministries, I mean, you deal with children's ministry, you got to have the background checks.
Yep.
You can't have, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to say nothing and get tossed off YouTube. But you have to do your background checks. For worship and media ministry, not really hip on church board selecting volunteers for sure, because the most important thing is relationship. And people that do not know, for example, a church board says, well, this guy looks like a good volunteer. They called us, whatever. Okay, well, great. But in this type of ministry, I consider this type of ministry like a football team. And maybe you're watching in Europe, and for that, you're thinking soccer, which is still teamwork. Here in the U.S., we're thinking American football, which is teamwork. There must be relationship, because I'm going to give you guys some gold now. In this ministry, worship, arts, media, technology, most of the people and the volunteers you are dealing with are nuts and flakes, and for sure, all of them are temperamental, meaning they're half temper and they're half mental. That's what happens in this ministry.
Yep.
Doesn't mean they're not great people, love God, and want to serve, but you're dealing with right-brained, artsy people. So you have to work off relationship, time, building confidence, building trust. And when you focus on those things first, more than, well, do you know how to set an audio game? You will get much further down the road by building a team. That's what Jesus did, right?
Well,
He built a team.
and I think also, just like in a business, right? You have certain people. If you go to trade shows, there's only certain people that'll be allowed to talk to the press and to the media, because either A, they're really good at talking and they have those talking points and they know how to deal with media. You're not going to put an engineer to talk with a media or press related person. They're not what we call a people person, right? And just like a pastor, priest, whatever, isn't going to just let anybody come up and get on the mic and disrupt the whole congregation. And as a CEO is not just going to let anybody represent his company, because it could bring damage to the brand, to the company, or let's flip it to the house of worship market. It can bring damage to your reputation as a house of worship, as a church, as a synagogue, whatever. That is the danger point. Like what you said is 100% correct.
I have been, so for years, probably 20 years, I did a lot of traveling all over the country and the world, training worship teams. Pastors would call me and say, can you please come in, spend a weekend with our worship team? And I would come in and go to a rehearsal with them, spend time with them, do a little training maybe on Saturday, speak at the church on Sunday. We called it WOW weekends, weekends of worship. And most of the churches that, I'm serious, most that I went to, their number one problem was their worship departments had no relationships. They were good people, maybe not, professionals or the best, but they were serving, they were great, they were learning their craft, but half of them didn't even like each other. And that's because they didn't take time to build relationships. If you do not have relationships in this ministry, and you're talking about recruiting volunteers, and let me tell you something about recruiting volunteers. Volunteers that you're trying to recruit can see very clearly when the atmosphere in your department, in your team, in your ministry is bad. And if it's bad and it's toxic and it's poisonous, they will absolutely not want to join and become a part of that environment. So volunteers, gaining them, creating the atmosphere where people would actually want to be a part of that team.
And you also got to put it. This is another thing with getting volunteers is if you're looking, let's say you're going to 2 services, Greg. Musicians have a hard time of letting go. That's something that they have a hard time with. And when there's another, let's just use this. There's another guitar player, or there's another drummer or keyboard player, and now you want to start a second service. That can cause some friction, and you got to make sure when you're getting volunteers that volunteer is not going to make the other one feel inadequate or less than, because now that they're getting involved and they have a talent that you have, that can pose problems. Like you're saying, that relationship has to be there. Otherwise, you're just going to have organized chaos, right?
You have to build that into the culture.
Yep.
There's no other option. My church, 5 drummers, 4 or 5 guitar players, 3 bass players. Everybody is a part of the team. We have 2 services on Sunday, and we may have guys that are scheduled, 2 weeks in a row, and then they're off 2 weeks. What we do is I put out on we actually all communicate over Telegram in our group. We're talking back and forth, and I'll say, okay, folks, we're looking at next 3 months. What Sundays are you available? What Sundays are you not? And of course, Sundays include the Thursday night rehearsal. And people come back and say, well, I think family trip here. I'm out for this. I'm out for that. And then my team and I, which is Chris, we start looking at it. We build the schedule out, and we don't have problems because we're one team. We work on the culture. We have people rooting for each other to succeed. Many times, let's say we have a drummer and a guitar and a bass player off. They're at church and they're worshiping God, and that set finishes or that day finishes. They'll send a message in, goes, guys, great job. That sounded fantastic today. You did a good job. But it's taken years to build that culture.
Well, and I think let's go a step further. Even in other ministries, you got kids ministry. My wife and I, we work as assistant pastors, but we also we head up all of the student ministry. But we also lead the kids ministry. Choosing our volunteers, one, Greg, that we've found through the years when we're picking a volunteer, we bring them in on a temporary basis. We bring them in for like a month. We see how the kids react. Kids will pick up on things that adults will not pick up on, and let's see how they gel with the adult helper. Are they scared of them? Are they more drawn back? And we'll kind of watch. We'll kind of watch and see how they are. Or are they the type of person that's going to come in and try to take over something that's already been established that works? These are the things that you need to look at, and that's why you can't just leave it. I'm 100% behind Greg when he said you can't leave it up to a board to decide if this person should or should not be in a particular ministry, because these ministries are going to make or break your church or your house of worship, because a lot of parents aren't going to come to your church if you don't have anything for the kids. If your kids' ministry is not there, your youth ministry is not there, they're not going to be there.
I was out in California. I also have another rule for volunteers, and that is it's a 6-month rule. I'm not looking for the next gift of God to walk in the church doors. Okay? I'm looking for a team player and people that have been called by God to serve there. When we were in California, late 90s, and starting a church in Sacramento, we were building a church from scratch. It started growing quickly. God just brought people from everywhere, and had a phenomenal worship team, like crazy good. Mr. Tom Willis, I've got the legend back there. Bernard P. Fife. We're building that, and God was bringing people to us, and my drummer was fantastic, and his sister was dating a professional musician. And this guy was born with a silver spoon in his mouth in regard to music. I'm not going to make this is not an exaggeration. I never heard this guy play a wrong note, and we've been playing music now for 25 years.
Wow.
Never. He's a professional.
Sure.
Sick. Like from Mars. So we were rehearsing, and my drummer, Mark, goes, hey, can Will come over and maybe play with us a little bit? He wants to start coming to church and getting involved, and he's good. So we went to the rehearsal, and I invited Will. Will came. In fact, let me do this, Stephen. This is Will right here, professional musician out in California. He's unbelievable. I don't mind giving him a great Christian guy, worship leader now. Phenomenal guy. But Will came to the rehearsal. We started playing, and I can remember we were playing the song Ancient of Days. He'd never even heard it. He goes, well, can I hear it? Played it one time for him. He goes, okay, I'm ready. And boom, perfection. And my whole team, we were sitting there like drool coming down. Give me the drool rag. And I'm wiping the drool off. And Will goes, man, this is so much fun. I just feel good here. Well, he came to church the next Sunday. And he gave his heart to the Lord. He became a Christian. He came to me and goes, I'd love to maybe serve God with my talent, my music. I said, I'll tell you what. You stick to it for 6 months, and I'll invite you to be a part of this team. My guys on the worship team came to me and goes, are you crazy? He's like the best guitar player I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I said, yeah, but we don't know him. He just gave his heart to the Lord. I can't just put him in. He's got to grow. He's got to learn our culture. Will not only came to church, but every Sunday when we were done for those first 6 months, he'd walk up on the stage. He goes, wow, guys, that was so good. What can I help clean up? Let me help you wrap some cables. He did that for 6 months. Of course, 6 months and 1 day, he was on the worship team, and we've been lifelong friends. I performed in his wedding, but even as good as he was, I waited for that 6 month to make sure there was a cohesiveness. Probably between temperamental and 6 months, the best information I can give you out of experience for volunteers.
And don't be afraid, guys, in this day and age, to do background checks. Just like a job is going to do a background check on you, you have to protect the ministry. And, without going down that road, you guys can kind of figure out what you need to do with that. But
we're getting a lot of comments that are agreeing. It's very important. Yeah.
James Dodge says the 6 months gives them an opportunity to show their commitment. We do this in the volunteer fire department. I believe in the 6 months or 3 months or whatever you decide to do. I do believe. Now there's some churches they don't believe it, that they feel like you need to get people plugged in right away, and I think what happens is you get a lot of chaos.
You do
with that, and that's why you have to be careful, especially Greg. Now I've been part of different church plants because of being in college. We got to go to different ones. Church plants are ones that I see because they're so starved for volunteers. They don't want to wait, and they get like a handful of people. Like you said, they'll get a professional musician that just gave their heart to the Lord, and they just want to get plugged in. And then next thing you know, that wears off. That newness wears off, and I can't be there, or they're not dedicated, or something like that. And then they're back to square one because they jumped in instead of letting that person see if they
or
can
you
gel.
Get 3 months down the road, and this person is now sowing discord in your team.
That too,
because you didn't take the time to get to know them.
Dub, he's in the chat room. He says, we did a volunteer job fair on Sunday before and after services 1 year before COVID, and it worked great. Each department set up booths. Let me read over here, for their specific volunteer needs. And he goes on to say, I'll pull that up here. One thing I've noticed or noted is most of my volunteers were very intimidated, right? Intimidated by the technology. Also, I find sometimes there is a heart issue that needs to be addressed. I think both Greg and I can speak for us and say we agree with that statement. But this is where you go, okay? And I'm going to use you, Greg, as an example for this. You started the program that you were doing, okay, because of everything that was going on with the pandemic and everything. You started with what you knew. We became friends. You reached out. What do you think? And I said, are you sure you want my honest truth? And you said, absolutely, give it to me. And we went through things. And I knew you couldn't change everything all at once because you had to learn. And you did. You pushed and you pushed, and you weren't at the point then technologically that you are now.
No.
But it didn't scare you because we broke it down into bite-sized chunks that you could look at and understand and go, that makes sense. And I think that's where a lot of technical ministries make their mistake. They make things so complicated that they don't try to find simple ways of doing the same thing so volunteers don't feel intimidated.
There's a question from David Develter. I'm doing my best. But
better you than me.
To simplify the AV technology task. That is really what you're talking about. So if you want to know the truth, with streaming getting going, Stephen and I had just become friends, and he says, "Do you want to know what's the truth?" I said, "What?" He said, "Your content's great. Your presentation is horrible, and I can help you." That's what started our relationship. Nice friendship there. What techniques do you use to simplify the AV technology tasks? Okay. Repetition, and one of the main techniques I personally use is when people are learning, let's say it ProPresenter or Easy Worship or learning sound or learning vMix, learning cameras, whatever it may be. What we do to simplify the process is we have them at our rehearsals. So they're there on a Thursday, and we will bring them in like on a Sunday when I'm leading worship, and then my guy that works with me, Chris, who was on here a couple of months ago, he will be taking care of our volunteers. He will be up on the ProPresenter computer because he's mastered all of the topics. He will be there hand training them, working with the cameras. So it's good to have a person that is cross-trained, that has the ability to teach and spend time. And the best way to do that is without the pressure of a service. You can do it at a worship rehearsal. And, you know, I don't mind at a worship rehearsal if the guy running cameras and learning it says, "PG, can you pause for a second? Because I can't hear what Chris is trying to tell me." And I don't mind. We'll stop our music rehearsal because it's just as important that our camera guy learns what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
And I think that, you know, you also have to, your ministry leader, let's say the media ministry leader, okay? Like in your case, it's Chris. In my case, it's me. You have to constantly be training your replacement. Your guy, okay, your second-hand guy. Like I have a guy that I've had since youth group. I've taught him the ins and outs. As long as everything's working, he can make it run every week without asking me anything. He's got it down. He's even changed some things to make it even simpler. Great. You know, he's stepping out. He's even implemented things without my help, which is great. It means he's learning. He's taking it to the next level. Now, this is where your leadership really comes to the test. Is that person sitting on that, or are they training their replacement? And you know what? He's training his replacement. So now we have three guys. If I'm not there, I don't get a phone call anymore like, "Oh, we can't get this up and running." They make it work because they know how to do it. You constantly have to have somebody else. Whoever you've trained, they need to train somebody else. And whoever they train, they need to train somebody else. Because when you have that one person, that job security, that halts any kind of growth that you're going to have. Because what if you want to do something else within the church, but you're married now to that music ministry or that media ministry? Well,
Stephen,
you can't move on.
Do me just tell the truth.
Go ahead, hit it.
All right. So the major problem lies in this. It lies in people in ministry, whether a worship leader, worship pastor, media pastor, who are actually having the title pastor, that are so insecure in their ministry and in their calling that they're unable to reproduce themselves, because if they feel that if they give away too much knowledge, then they will not be as valuable, because their value is not in who they are, but what they do. For me, I could care less if I ever lead worship again, if I ever preach again, if I ever stream again. My value is not sitting on this camera trying to help people. My value is not getting on a stage leading a song. My value is in reproducing what God has given me and seeing people shine. When you can get to your leadership to that level, success will roll.
And I agree with that. I mean, I do that all the time. You know that. I try to pour into as many people as I can.
Worship leaders, musicians, the temperamental people I was talking about, the right brain, are so insecure.
Yep.
You get this better musician, this better singer, and all of a sudden somebody in the church comes up and goes, "Oh, your new lady Angela did such a phenomenal job." And the worship leader goes home and puts his head in the pillow and goes, "Oh my God, I'm not the best anymore." Good.
Yeah. That means you did something right. I say that to my daughter because I've been playing drums since I was 15, and she plays drums in the school band. I started teaching her at a young age. She picked it up, and obviously because they know that her dad's a drummer, that she can have drums in the house, so they let her be a drummer at school. And I keep trying to tell her, I'm like, you should play a couple songs at the church, and she goes, she's not into being in front of people, and maybe that'll change as she gets older here. But I'm like, Dad's got to retire soon, like from drumming, like because I'm okay with that. Man, I would be tickled pink if my daughter took over for me, or if we were going back and forth, like 1 week she played, 1 week man, it would be a great opportunity for me to pour into her things that I messed up on that I could teach her.
I'm a piano player, keyboard player, and some of my greatest joy, my daughter, I've raised her up. She's a phenomenal musician. I have another kid in the church, actually Chris's younger brother, phenomenal musician, keyboard player. And my greatest joy is when I can walk past them. For example, on a Sunday, let's say I'm speaking and I walk past them and I'll tell my daughter Grace, I said, split your hands. You're too tight there in the middle. You're stepping on the acoustic. You're stepping on the electric. Split your hands an octave. Give me some more of those upper frequencies. She goes, "Okay, Dad." And she does it. And all of a sudden she recognizes, "Oh, that sounds completely different." Or Doug, Chris's brother, I play a lot of gospel chords, a lot of R&B, jazz type stuff. And, I use all these alternate chord patterns. And Doug has now learned some of the stuff I do. And they'll finish worshiping, and maybe I'm in the back of the sanctuary, and Doug will walk right up to me and goes, "I played your chord." And I said, "I heard it." And it's the greatest joy. Greatest joy is when you see others running with what you've put in them.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they see what you did works. Tom Willis in the chat room says, training and replacement is a form of discipleship. If you know Jesus, but do not tell anyone, you're failing at discipleship. And John Cook, we agree 100% there, Tom. John Cook says, do you find it difficult to teach troubleshooting? Can this even be taught? My volunteers are good at running things, but if things go wrong, they cannot troubleshoot even though I have trained them.
Can I answer that one?
You can, because I think it's an art. I think it's an art form.
John Cook, you a smart person. We do not let our volunteers troubleshoot. If they're trained to certain levels, and we try to get them to the troubleshooting level, but we have, for example, I can troubleshoot everything. Of course, Chris can troubleshoot everything. But if we have cameras, then we're calling somebody. We're calling Steven, or a networking issue. We're calling somebody. We have another guy, our key camera guy. He's trained to troubleshoot vMix, but he can't troubleshoot audio, for example. So no, we don't even try to train on the troubleshoot. Because honestly, let's say Chris is out of town or I'm out of town. We can even troubleshoot it over the phone, because what happens in troubleshooting is most people, they just get a little spastic, or they want to just start tearing stuff down instead of a logical order. So the most important thing for me about troubleshooting is being able to keep calm. Okay, this is logical. We're having an issue. We've lost that camera. Why? There can only be 4 reasons. Let me start going through them. So no, our troubleshooting is left. That's a different beast.
Well, Greg, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You have a guy that wants to play drums. Okay, Chris plays drums. And he says to you, he says, "Hey, can you have Chris teach me how to play drums?" And you're like, "Sure, I'll go to Chris.
Mhm.
Have him teach." Chris spends an hour with the guy and he comes back and he says, "Hey, PG, this guy just don't have it.
Mhm.
He has no rhythm. He has no natural rhythm." And then the mom of that person comes up to you and says, "Well, why won't you teach my son, Chris? PG, you said he could teach him drums." And he's like, "What?" And you say, "You can't teach
Because he
him
can't
drums.
play.
You can't teach rhythm. You either have it or you don't have it. It's
Listen.
something you can acquire maybe as time goes on, but it's not something
No.
you can't teach me rhythm."
It's, once again, everything in this program for volunteers is going to come back to relationship. Not only relationship in your team, but relationship in your church. The people in your church will grow an appreciation and understanding of how this ministry works, the complexities of it. Once again, this connects back to why we do not do public calls from the stage for worship and media ministry. Everything is built through relationship.
Yeah, and John goes on to say, he says, "As a background, I have an engineering background and degree." And so he's 100% right. Like, I have guys like my right-hand guy. We'll call him my right-hand guy. There's certain things he troubleshoots, and there's certain things he doesn't touch. He doesn't touch the website. That's all me. And because it's a different beast, okay? He doesn't do networking. Networking is a totally different beast. It's just like audio and video. 2 separate. When I run into audio problems that I can't fix, I call Chris, I call Greg, and I'm like, "Guys, this is what's happening. What do I do?" Now, my right-hand guy did spend some time with the X32. He's watched a lot of videos. He does know his way around it better than I do because he's up there all the time. So if he says, "Oh, we just change this, okay, cool. But 100%, Greg, you limit how many people are troubleshooting, because what happens is too many hands in the cookie jar.
It's a different beast.
Bad things happen. So,
well, it's like the example we had last week, Stephen. I go and come into the studio, I fire everything up, and I'm ready to record my stream, my daily stream for Ukraine. And I look into my camera that I'm looking into right now, and I have no camera.
Well, it was flickering.
It's flickering. Yeah, flickering. And I'm looking at it, and flickering, and I said, look over to vMix, look over there, check over to the switch. Say, all right, I'm done. Steven.
Well, and we went through a bunch of things, right?
And brother, you sitting there on your phone as a network engineer started going, okay, let's start with this. I mean, from NDI, switching, cabling, and Steven did it perfectly for me. Now, fixed it, and everything's golden. But it was a process. I went to the guy that could troubleshoot it.
Well,
easy.
And I think sometimes, too, and nothing against John Cook here today. He is a background engineer. As a broadcast engineer, too, I'm with him on this. But sometimes I have to bring myself down to a consumer level, because I want to go with the most invasive fix that I possibly can find, because it's probably that, right? When a lot of times it's just the most simplest thing. The simplest thing is like updating a driver or unplugging and plugging something in.
We thought it was my switch going bad. We felt really confident, and I'm getting ready to order a switch, and Steven calls me the next morning and goes, Oh, did you update NDI tools? I said, no. It's update NDI. Updated NDI. Perfection. It was so simple.
and sometimes that happens though, because again, as a guy that's put together many studios, you go with the most invasive, right? Either way, it still would benefit you down the road to have a backup switch just in case if something dies, you can just plug it back in.
I do.
That's
it's in your
crazy thing.
studio. I'll drive over
Yeah.
and get it.
I got about 6 of them.
Exactly. I've got a backup.
Come on over. Well, I was going to do that if it was in.
I know.
I would have
If I
met
had
you
a
even
problem,
halfway if that would have helped.
Exactly. No.
John Cook says, "Love your explanation, Greg. I am logical in my troubleshooting. Sometimes my volunteers get a little overwhelmed if issues arise. I think a lot of volunteers get overwhelmed." And he says, also, one of my volunteers, let me pull that up here so everybody can see this, is a graphical genius.
Mm-hmm.
She saves me a ton of time. It's what you said as working as a team. I troubleshoot. She makes graphics. Other run camera. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. 100%. Know your role, right? Stay in your lane.
And encourage your team. Like, seriously, guys, I'm giving you the inside stuff here. When I'm leading worship, our team exits stage left. I'm in the back corner of the sanctuary when they come by me, and people know our hearts. We know our hearts, so I don't get hung up on this, but I got the fist bump ready. All the vocalists and the band members, I say, great job, great job, great job.
That's right.
Great job, great job, great job, great job. You have to do it, man.
Even a thank you. A thank you goes a long way, as that's something we've learned even under our leadership, pastors. We thank our volunteers every day every Sunday before they leave. They're like, "Oh, we're heading out. Like, thank you for everything you did today. We really appreciate that." In fact, every year, we have it coming up, I think November 12th, we do a volunteer appreciation dinner. Anybody that volunteers throughout that year gets invited, and it's completely catered.
We do that in September.
Yeah, you can leave your kids with your babysitter. You and your husband and wife can go out. Like if your wife serves and you know, you're not, it's a great way to just, again, Greg, building relationship with the volunteers, right? It's a great way to do that.
I can give you the steps. Seek and find them, define positions, train, schedule people, communicate, have fun in fellowship. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's all relationship. It's all relationship in dealing with volunteers in this ministry.
And I think that even with other houses of worship, other churches, just like with us here, right? We met through the problems that we had at our church, right, with the sound. I think what you said about pastors when they get that title is spot on, and I wish more pastors would get that, because I understand it's a sign of respect. We hang out with some of these guys on Saturday night. They don't call me pastor, and I don't expect them to. At the church, they'll call me pastor. I mean, that's, but I'm not defined by my title. I'm not defined by that. And I think so many pastors out there let that title define who they are.
You done gone to meddling now.
I got to be careful here, because I'm going to start preaching, so I better be careful.
We're telling the truth.
But that's the reality, folks, and that's you as a volunteer, or you even somebody that's on a board. This is a great way to see if your senior pastor or your leadership, forget the pastor, if the children's ministry director falls under that category, maybe you don't want to serve under that person.
Stephen, I've got a prophetic word in regard to this. Are we allowed to give prophetic words on PTZOptics?
Sure, give it to them. I don't think there's audio on that. You might have to.
Audio?
There's no audio yet. Oh, that's a good clip too. See if you can get the audio pumped through.
Why don't I have the audio? Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their neighbor.
There you go.
Work together.
Tom Willis says, if you know your equipment, troubleshooting becomes natural. 100%. John Cook, he goes, I bake too. My wife or I always make cinnamon rolls for the AV team. Every service helps with creating team environment. and showing our appreciation for them. I think I need to go with his AV team. Hey,
Can I play Barney again?
I didn't hear the audio on that one. We'll have
you
to
have to hear the audio.
My hero. He's nope. Still no audio.
Oh, baloney.
No, there's no audio. You might not be sending it out over. That's right.
Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their neighbor.
These are, guys, we're gonna have to wrap this up here shortly, but I do want to put out there. Hopefully you guys find these types of shows, these talks, informative and helpful. We don't have all the answers, but we can give you answers based on our experience. I've been in ministry my whole life. Greg's been in ministry his whole life. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad, we've seen the downright ugly, and if it can help you further your ministry, that's our goal. So coming up here in 2023, I got to get used to saying that. Send us an email. Let us know what you want us to cover, what you want us to get in. If we don't have the answer with Greg's Rolodex and my Rolodex, I think we could find somebody or someone to come on and help you guys in that scenario. So if there's something you really want, even if you don't want to email us, that's fine. Leave a comment below on the video and let us know what you want us to talk about. Because next month, we'll tell you right now for the subject, we're going to be getting ready for those holiday plays. What are some of the things that you need to start preparing for? Don't wait till the last minute. That's what we're going to cover next month. So you don't want to miss next month's Salt Talk, because those holiday plays and services are coming up very quickly.
Christmas services, Christmas Eve services,
yes,
Hanukkah, whatever
you're celebrating, they're coming up quick. And so Greg has a checklist that we're going to run down. I have a checklist. These are things that I want to present to you that maybe you just didn't think about. So make sure you guys you're tuned in. If you have somebody that you think would find that beneficial, have them tune in and bring your questions. So we want it to be a question and answer thing. So let's see what Tom
and Stephen
says.
I just want to say, PTZOptics sponsors this program once a month, and
Tom's got it right.
Nip it in the bud.
It in the bud.
It's just a good company, and I'm not on PTZOptics payroll, but they care about not just making money in cameras. They care about the church community. They care about helping churches, worship departments, technology get better. So big shout out to those guys.
Absolutely. And as an employee, I am privileged, because this is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it's a way that, not many companies give you the liberty to do that. And so being able to share your knowledge with people and help them is there's no bottom dollar here. We're not throwing things in your face to try to sell you. Just know that PTZOptics is a reputable company with reputable cameras. That's we let the product speak for itself.
And good people. Good people.
That's right.
They care. Yep.
That's right. So
you're getting there. Everybody else is great, but Steven's coming along.
Well, so I'm still working on that whole working with it as a team player. No, I'm just kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Greg Terry, you can check out his show daily, youtube.com/Greg Terry Experience, every night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube.
9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock California, 4 a.m. Ukraine, every night. Be blessed, guys.
Really appreciate that. And like I said, we'll pull this up here real quick. Tommy says, kudos to PTZOptics for their support of the live streaming community. Absolutely. In fact, tomorrow, I believe we are doing a show, and I say we believe because sometimes you run into problems when you're moving and whatnot, and they might need attention elsewhere. But we're going to be doing a show, Tess and I, the PTZOptics live show. That should be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you want to tune in for that. And Greg will be there to heckle us.
Can I have one more try?
You absolutely can if you got the fife. Bring up the fife. And there is no audio.
No.
We'll have to figure that out.
Well, what are we going to be doing? Troubleshooting.
We'll be troubleshooting that. David says, let me pull this up here real quick. David says, thank you for the discussion Lots of great input to take back to our team. Is there a vMix checklist that you could share with us?
Yeah, there is, but right now I can't even get my audio to play.
We're gonna have to get back to you on that one. It's probably just the way he's routing it with that, because he's been out of the studio for a while. But guys, we really do appreciate it. We have to roll out of here. Really appreciate everyone that tuned in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a comment below if you really like here what we're doing and you want to see more of what we're doing here, that what subject you want us to talk about for the new year. We'll see you guys. Have a great rest of your month.